drug. A bit about each drug with practical tips. The principles of how to choose an anti-epileptic medication. What are the national and international guidelines? What are the parameters and what is the consensus statements? And then we'll just focus a little bit on particularly specific common epilepsies and seizures that we face on an everyday basis on a practical basis. So this is really the evolution of anti-epileptics. I'm sure you'll have seen this slide many, many times. We started with the bromides in the late 1800s, and then you can see how slowly anti-epileptics were discovered. And now in the last, from 1980 to 2000, and now to 2020, you can see the huge number of drugs which have escalated. And these are what you would call your newer anti-epileptics. And these are your conservative or your first-line anti-epileptics. So what are the drugs that we have to choose from? So really, these are your conventional drugs: bromides, phenobarb, phenytoin, valproate, carbamazepine, all the benzodiazepines. And I put ethosuximide in a different color because it is a conventional anti-epileptic, but it's coming to our country only recently. Whereas the newer anti-epileptics, if you look at them, topiramate, lamotrigine, oxcarb, gabapentin, vigabatrin, these two are not available in our country, so I've colored them in a different one. Clobazam, fosphenytoin, zonisamide, levatricitam, pregabalin, rufinamide, again not available in our country, brivaracetam, lacosamide, and the few newer ones including cannabidiol or the cannabidiol derivatives from cannabis. So what's in the pipeline? Ritagabin is there. There are lots of new drugs which are coming in, and hopefully in the pipeline we'll have more drugs which are there. And what are other drugs which are not anti-epileptic but can be used as anti-epileptic drugs? We all know about pyridoxine-dependent seizures. We use ACTH, prednisolone, hydrocortisone, methylpred, acetazolamide or Diamox that we routinely use. And then the various forms of the ketogenic, plain ketogenic, modified ketogenic, Atkins, and a liquid diet which we use in small children. Okay, so basically, very simply put, what is epilepsy, if you understand? It's a balance between neurotransmitters in the brain. Okay, now what causes this imbalance of neurotransmitters? It may be a structural damage, and as a result of which new sprouts come up and the transmitter signal changes. It may be genetically induced. It may be other etiologies, but basically when the balance between inhibition and excitation gets affected and you get more excitation and less inhibition, that's when you tend to throw seizures again and again. So if you look at this slide very carefully, these are your excitatory synapses. And this will show you, and this will show you where, this is your sodium channel, and which are all the drugs: phenytoin, carbamazepine, valproate, rufinamide, lamont, all of them work on the sodium channel. Levatricitam works on a totally different receptor called the SV2A receptor, and it's the only drug that works on this receptor. Topiramate works on the sodium, topiramate works on the AMPA, topiramate works on sodium and calcium, felbamate works on the NMDA, gabapin works on, and pregabalin work on calcium channels. Then you go to the inhibitory synapses, which are mainly GABA-related stuff. And you have vigabatrin, tiagabin, benzodiazepines, topiramate, and barbiturate. So our old conventional treatment, benzodiazepines and phenobarbital or barbiturates, all work on GABA. So they enhance the inhibitory action in the brain so that you have a bigger source of inhibitory neurotransmitter to protect the child from throwing a seizure. So these are just to highlight. I don't expect you all to remember, but we know that there are channels, there are GABAs, there are different receptors. There is SV2A receptor, which only one drug works on, levatricitam and brivaracetam, which is the sister drug. And some of them have multiple channels that they work on. So who works on sodium? Main ones you need to remember are phenytoin, carbamazepine, lamotrigine, topiramate, and even valproate. Calcium, ethosuximide, valproate. GABA, benzodiazepines, barbiturates, valproate, gabapentin, vigabatrin, topiramate. And acetylcholine esterase, felbamate, and topiramate. So you can see in this chart alone that a drug like topiramate works over here, a drug like topiramate works here, and it works over here. So these are drugs which are called broad spectrum anti-epileptics. When I work through multiple mechanisms, I have an added advantage because if I'm working through this or I'm with another drug who works through another mechanism, I will use a different mechanism to try and kill the epilepsy as we go. So you have valproate, if you can see, works through sodium, it works through calcium, and it works through GABA. Topiramate also works through multiple channels like that. So that was just a little introduction as to how these drug works. They work through channels, they work through receptors, and some work multiple methods, some work single methods. The next thing you need to keep in mind is where the speed of action of a drug. When I give you a tablet or a syrup, how fast will that drug start working? How soon will you get response so that you can tell mom when she calls and says, Doctor, amna bhi kahi nathi thayu, then you know that, okay, don't worry, ek hafta thobo, be hafta thobo, you know how to counsel them, how long it's going to take for the dawa to work, so that you know what. So when you see the fast acting ones, who are your fast ones? Levetiracetam and valproate. Oxcarbazepine, though it is really fast, when it converts to its active metabolite, it takes time, so it's really not fast. But levetiracetam and valproate are fast, relatively fast. That's why we have IV preparations in them, because they work fast. And that means normally you will build up a blood level after 6 half-lives of a dose of a drug. So if 6 hours is levetiracetam, in 36 hours, you will have reached the full dose of levetiracetam in your blood system. So in 36 hours, in one day, you should be reaching top benefit of the drug. So when you want fast acting, someone is seizing very frequently, you may think of a drug that works fast to get your benefit. Likewise, if I looked at those who work slow, carbamazepine works very slow. Ethosuximide, 60 hours. Lamotrigine, 25 to 35 hours. Phenobarbital, 70 to 140 hours. Topiramate, 20 to 25 hours. What does this mean? This means that these patients will not reach the top level until at least 2 to 3 weeks sometimes, or 2 to 3 days if necessary, or 10 days before of taking the medicine before they get the benefit. So these, when you prescribe, you tell mom, don't worry, it's not magic. You are not going to see response tomorrow. Please be patient. It will take a little time and the drug will start working. So that's how fast the drug works, or how slow the drug works, and the half-life of the drug. And then how the drug gets one slide only on metabolism. Some go through hepatic, some are inducers, some are inhibitors. Those who are in the childbearing age group, the effect on OC-pill interaction, those that definitely have action, those that have possible actions. Primary metabolism, those that work through the liver, those that work through the kidney. And those that are highly protein bound, indicating pharmacokinetics is little difficult to monitor in them. And those that we have IV preparations, which are lacosamide, levetiracetam, phenytoin, phenobarb, and sodium valproate. So these are the different, you have to keep these different variables at the back of your mind when you are actually choosing your drug. So now let's actually come to the drugs. I'm going to go through the newer AEDs with you. The slide may look heavy before it starts, but I'm going to only highlight the practical points that we deal with on an everyday basis when we write these drugs. I think this presentation is going to be given to the team, and you would be able to access it later down the line if you want a repeat reference. So we're going to start first with topiramate. Now I showed you already in the chart, it worked on sodium, it worked on calcium, it worked on GABA, and it worked on acetylcholinesterase. So you can see it's multimodal, and it's what you'd call a broad spectrum. Okay, its half-life is very long. So you can give, when you have something which has a long half-life, what is the advantage? You can give OD dosage. So all those drugs that we saw had long half-lives, topiramate, lamotrigine, phenobarbital, all of them can be given, diazepams can all be given in OD dosage because they stay in your bloodstream for a long time. So you can give topiramate OD. You have tablet in topiramate. There are sprinkles available internationally, but not in our country. One concern with the tablet, that topiramate, once you break the tablet, you cannot use it more than 24 hours later. It denatures. So topiramate is a drug that you cannot put into those dibbis and put akka mainana, all the drugs which are there. You have to open a fresh strip, a fresh tablet, and give it to the child. If you are using a dose less than what it is, You will throw away that tablet for a few days till you have titrated the dose so that you can use one tablet within 24 hours. The tablets that you get are 25 milligrams, 50 milligrams, and 100 milligrams. The dose is usually 2 to 4 milligrams, but you can get good results with as little as 0.5, and you can go to as high as 20 milligrams. The main side effects of topiramate, and the one thing that you should try and remember from each of the drugs that I talked to you today, is what are the main side effects. Just take home the salient side effects. You'll understand why I'm emphasizing on that later. So the main side effects is weight loss. Okay, so they lose their appetite. They have speech concerns. Some of them find word finding issues. Because of that word finding, they find a cognitive decline. A very important thing is they do not sweat. Because they do not sweat, their temperatures go up, and invariably they will go from one doctor to the other, and there will be pyrexia of unknown origin investigation done extensively, and then you realize that it is topiramate. Just up the fluids, see that you hydrate him more, keep the temperature under check, and if in spite of fluids your temperature does not come down, means you have to cut the dose a little bit. Topiramate, valproate work very well together. They cause an encephalopathy, which you would treat with carnitine if necessary. They can cause kidney stones, but in all my practice, the only patients who have kidney stones with topiramate are those who are on the ketogenic diet, because both of them cause. So zonisamide, topiramate, and ketogenic, all three cause kidney stones. These are the three you would not put together, or you would monitor the kidney. And glaucoma, in all my years, I have not seen a single patient or a pediatric patient with glaucoma. So because of this weight loss, and in India, parents are fixated on the weight of their child, we always recommend you go very slow in the initial doses, and you can usually get away with this weight loss problem. And you will up the dose every 1 to 2 weeks. It can be used as broad spectrum, it can be used as add-on, and it has no monitoring. Lamotrigine is a sodium-related drug. It's a fantastic drug. Unfortunately, for some reason, we don't use it that much in our country. Its half-life is very long. Again, it means it will take long to kick in, and you can use it as an OD dose. That's all you should remember. It's available only as a tablet. You have a small 5 milligram tablet, which is there for children. So you have 5, 25, 50, and 100. And when you're using it with valproate, because the best anti-epileptic combination you can ever try of all the drugs that we have is sodium valproate with lamotrigine combined together. So if you put valproate and lamotrigine together, you need to keep the valproate low, between 2 to 3. And if you're doing it without valproate, the lamotrigine can go 3 to 7. And again, it's broad spectrum. It works for focal, it works for this. And the only single side effect you need to keep in mind is the rash, the Stevens-Johnson syndrome rash. It is idiosyncratic. It does not come at a fixed dose. It does not come at a fixed duration. It can come even 3 years after you've been on the medication. But yes, if you titrate very fast, and yes, if you are on sodium valproate, the chances of getting the rash are slightly high. Oxcarbazepine is basically the big brother of carbamazepine, and all it does is gives you less side effects of carbamazepine. The main side effect that you're looking at is hyponatremia and GI disturbance that they get, and that goes away usually with the Oxcarb. You do remember there is a rash which can be there, which we need to warn patients about before we give it. Otherwise, it's a relatively faster half-life compared to oxcarbazepine, and it's used for mono or polytherapy, but its indication is partial seizures. So it's really a drug only for partial seizures, ideally, not so much for generalized seizures. Vigabatrin, a drug which is really not available on the market easily because it's on the black market, but you must know about it for one reason: it's used in tuberous sclerosis. It is by far the drug of choice in tuberous sclerosis. It works only on GABA. It has no major side effects except for visual field effects, which comes if you use very high doses and very long durations. So when we're using it in small children, we cannot monitor visual field because they can't do perimetry. But that's why we use it only for 9 to 12 months, and then we try and take it off. But today you can do an ERG and see whether it's, you can monitor the visual fields in them. Clobazam, I'm sure y'all can teach me more than I can teach you. Y'all must be using it all the time. Frisium, Cloba, Lobazam, whatever you use. Benzodiazepine, fantastic drug, very good anti-epileptic. Side effect is the side effect of all benzodiazepines. What are they? Sedation. Behavior. The biggest side effect of the benzodiazepines is behavior. They make them irritable, cranky, hyperactive. The next big side effect is they increase the secretions in the oral cavity. So if you're a normal child, or like you and me, we can manage the secretions. But if you're a child with cerebral palsy, intellectual disability, and I have too much secretions, I end up with more chest infections. So if your child comes back with more frequent chest infections after you have put him on nitrazepam, clonazepam, clobazam, or any of the benzodiazepines, remember to cut your dosage, because those chest infections put those children back relatively. Respiratory depression, not so common. Tolerance, not seen so much in children as compared to adults. Fosphenytoin is just, again, like the big brother of phenytoin. The equivalent is what you need to know. Relatively safe, but the main problem with all the phenytoin derivatives is drug levels are very variable, and they're not the drugs of choice unless in the ICU. Levetiracetam. This has become the new phenobarbital of I think, of India at least. Everyone writes levetiracetam. We have a comfort level with it. One, it works on a totally different receptor modality. Okay, so that's a huge advantage. Everyone is fighting for sodium, calcium, potassium, GABA, and this one is on a totally different planet, working in a different method. The other advantage, fast acting. I told you in 24 hours to 36 hours, if you load a patient with levetiracetam in 24 hours or 12 hours, he will reach maximum level. Next advantage, you have tablet, syrup, and IV infusion available. Does not cause respiratory depression in the ICU setting, etc., but causes huge amounts of mood and behavior problems. So while I was really happy when I started, now I think a little bit twice, because very often we don't ask parents about the child's mood. We don't bother to ask about mood and behavior, and is she feeling low, is she feeling happy? We just say, chalta hai, you know, this is all studies, or this is 10th standard, don't worry. Everybody feels like that. Not so. Don't let the child ever become a different person. You have to keep in mind that their mood and behavior has to be who they are. Dose is 10 to about 40 to 50 milligrams. Monopolytherapy used for partial seizures, generalized seizures, all types of seizures. And the best is that it's used in status and it's used in acute seizures. So brivaracetam is the big brother of levetiracetam. Main advantage, as fast, little less fast as fast acting, and that's why it can give it as OD dosage. It gives you less side effects, but it can still cause behavior issues. It can still cause a little bit of depression, so you need to keep that in mind. Zonisamide, now I'm going to drugs which are not so commonly used. So I'm not going to focus so much attention of them, because as pediatricians, I don't think y'all are going to be using these really newer ones, because they have very limited indications. Half-life is long. Somnolence, dizziness, irritability, behavior, again, renal calculi I mentioned. The dose is from 2 to 10. You can go to 12 or 14. It's used for can use for partial or generalized, but the most important epilepsy you'll use is progressive myoclonic epilepsies, your SSPEs, your neuronal ceroid lipofuscinosis, your degenerative myoclonic epilepsies. That's the one that they'll benefit. Lacosamide is a new drug, which I don't know how many of you are comfortable using, but I think it's slowly going to become the new levetiracetam. So I would like you to listen carefully. It's used for partial as well as generalized seizures. It's a slow sodium channel. All the others are fast sodium channel. This one is slow sodium channel. Its dose is 4 to 8, but you can go to a maximum of 12 to 15. Has very minimum side effects. Very little side effects. The odd patient will say nausea didn't suit me and stop it. But otherwise, most patients seem to be comfortable. Now we even have a syrup, we have tablet, and best is we have IV. So I have started using a lot of IV lacosamide in the ICU setup, and it works wonders. So please learn about lacosamide. It's going to improve your spectrum, one more in your armor. Perampanel, not going to waste time on it. It's AMPA receptor. That's the advantage, is that it has a different receptor mechanism. Indication of choice is Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, intractable seizures. Side effects are dizziness and mainly balance related, little bit of ataxia. And half-life is so long that it's 4 days. You get it? The half-life is 4 days. That means it will take 2 to 3 weeks before you reach, 24 days before you reach steady state with perampanel. This is something which has already come out in the US with the FDA approving it. It's cannabidiol. Okay, remember, this is one part of cannabis. Cannabis is basically cannabidiol and THC. The THC is the addictive part of the bhang that you would worry about. Cannabidiol is not addictive, so you don't need to worry. It comes in an oil preparation. It's not available in India, but we can import it. It comes on they order it, parents order it on Amazon, and we have 1 or 2 distributors in the country who can do it. It works very well for Dravet syndrome, LGS, and genetic epilepsies. But it's not to be used routinely for any of our regular epilepsies. It's expensive. And the one side effect I've uniformly seen in my patients is they become a little hyperactive. The last drug that I'm going to deal with is the ketogenic diet. Fantastic drug. It works just like a medicine. It can be used for spasms, for LGS, for myoclonias. It's not as difficult as people make it out to be. It is also not the same as bole ke khali tel nu khao ne shakkar nu baddu band kari nakho. It doesn't work that way. You need a dietitian. You need someone to sit with you, teach you, and do it. But today you have liquid diet for the newborn babies and others. We have modified Atkins diet. We have Atkins diet. We have MCT diet. So we have multiple types of diet where we can make it even for vegetarians, and we will make it with the food that you eat at home. So if the staple food is this cereal or that grain or that dal or that fruit in this child's life, we will make you a diet using up what he normally eats. So this is a very, very, very important slide. It is a slide which gives you relative side effects, important, just the most important side effects for most of the drugs that we have. So carbamazepine, what are they? Very often some patients will tell you they see double when they're at the peak of the dose. So 2 hours after the dose, when it's at peak, they'll say, dizziness is there, cognitive, and hyponatremia. The rash is also there. It's very, very rare, but the rash is there. Valproate, and when I say carbamazepine, I say oxcarb as well. Valproate, the drug that you and I all use the most, single most important problem, weight gain. Weight gain, typically, if this is my impression, comes usually more in the adolescent age than it comes in the younger age group. Hair loss. The trick for hair loss is biotin. Hair loss secondary to valproate, just write biotin, 10 milligram twice a day. In a few months, the hair loss also stops and the hair comes back perfectly. Now the big problem, PCOD. PCOD, polycystic ovarian disease, is what will make you think twice of prescribing valproate in any young adolescent girl. Liver dysfunction, highly overrated, hardly ever seen, and it's only seen in those who have inherited metabolic genetic disorders. Phenytoin is hirsutism, gum hyperplasia, ataxia, and cognition. I think we are all familiar with phenytoin. Please, I beg you, do not use phenytoin in young girls. It changes their face, it changes their bone structure, it makes them look coarse and hairy, and nobody wants that when you're a young woman. Even for a boy, do not use phenytoin long term. Phenobarbital, drowsy, cognitive ataxia, withdrawal seizure, superb drug, ideal drug for the first year of life. After that, if you can use a newer IAD, I would prefer that. Lamotrigine, we've discussed, excellent drug. The one side effect, Steven-Johnson, rare, but it's there. Topiramate, weight loss, we discussed, aphasia, incontinence, some of them, and they become hyperthermic or the temperature goes up. Levatricitam and brivaratricitam is mood, behavior, mood. You know, they get fluctuations. She'll cry suddenly for half a day and then mom will say, tomorrow she was just laughing nonstop and then she just sits and cries. I can't explain what's happened. That's the drug. Vigabatrin field effects, you can use an ERG to test if it's happening, but ideally do not use for more than a year and do eye testing if possible. Benzodiazepines, we've already covered: drowsy, tolerance, saliva, chest infections, behavior, hyperactivity. Zonisamide is mood, lacosamide is also very little, but it's mood. Cannabis is basically hyperactivity. Ketogenic diet is constipation, infections, nausea, vomiting, and calculi, as we described before. So you need to know, I know it may be too much today because I'm giving you all the new drugs in one shot, but even if you remember one or two things of each drug that you should keep at the back of your mind, it will help you. So while these are all the known side effects that we've discussed, do remember that these drugs also have added benefits. So when you do levetiracetam, there's no drug-drug interaction, and it's found to be anti-epileptogenic. So you're not worried about drug-related kidney excretion, hepatic excretion, none of that you worry. So it's a superb drug when you have multisystemic disorders. It's the drug of choice for the elderly and the geriatric. Why? Because already the BP is up and the heart is down and the kidneys are not working and liver is dysfunctional. You don't have to worry about anything. Levetiracetam doesn't interact with anybody or any organ, and it doesn't give you any major problems. Lamotrigine has the minimum teratogenic effect of all the AEDs, and that is why it is the drug of choice of all women in childbearing age group. Oxcarb and carbamazepine, you can do rapid titration, but mood stability. So you know that psychiatrists use Oxcarb all the time. If you've seen a psychiatrist's prescription, he's got carbamazepine and Oxcarb on it for sure. It's a mood stabilizer. Topiramate, it can use for weight loss. Someone is heavy, I use it for weight loss. Topiramate is the drug of choice for migraine, and it's also used for neuropathic pain. And valproate is also used for migraine, and it's also used as a mood stabilizer. So now when I'm treating my patient, if she is heavy and this, I'm not going to use valproate. I'll use topiramate to make weight loss. Plus, if she's got history of headaches, which are migraine, then my drug of choice is topiramate. You get it? If I have got mood-related problems, I might think valproate. Likewise, these are the drugs that psychiatrists use very often. And when psychiatrists use, you'll see these: carbamazepine for agitation and impulsivity, anxiety, diazepam for anxiety and alcohol withdrawal, gabapentin, lamotrigine, bipolar disorder, and depression. So if your patient is slightly depressed, you would prefer to use lamotrigine. Lorazepam, anxiety and agitation. Oxcarb is for aggression, bipolar, and impulsive. Topiramate for alcohol withdrawal and binge eating. Those who just keep eating and putting on weight should put them on topiramate. And valproic uses in bipolar disorder. And do not believe for once that children do not experience these psychiatric conditions. The mental illness or the mental health problems in children is huge, particularly in those who are on anti-epileptics and those who have epilepsy. So please, as part of your history taking, ask, mood kem chhe, behavior kem chale, school masu thait. These little clues will help you choose the correct drug and not only look to cut the seizures, but to give the child the best drug to treat all the aspects of their development. So now you've got a little understanding of the drugs, you've got an understanding of the associated benefits and associated side effects. You understand who's a fast worker, who's a slow worker, how they are working. Now we move to how to choose that drug. So first, you confirm that the events are seizures. I think this Rajesh covered yesterday with seizure mimics. Then you confirm that you have diagnosis. I think this was covered on the first day with first unprovoked seizure and how to manage and when would you call it epilepsy. Then you identify the seizure type, which is what was covered to you yesterday. Are they partial or focal seizures? Are they generalized? If they're generalized, are they myoclonics? Are they atonics? Are they spasms? What type of seizure are you looking at, or what type of epileptic syndrome? Okay, so in peds particularly, we have this large chunk of epileptic syndromes where you have one type of seizure, one type of EEG, one MRI, one neuropsych development, and one drug which works beautifully, and together you put it, it's a syndrome. So once I know what type of seizure I have or what syndrome I have, now I start deciding which drug to use. So what are the two things that you have to look at? Effectiveness is marked by two things. One is how effective is the drug? That's the efficacy of the drug. That is the time taken to get the next seizure. So if the time taken to the next seizure is 6 months, it's an effective drug. If the time taken to the next seizure is 2 weeks, it's a relatively ineffective drug. And tolerability is the time to withdrawal. How soon did you have to take away the drug from the patient because of side effects? So there are two things that are very, very important when you choose a drug. One is how effective is the drug, and two is how well tolerated is the drug. What are the side effects that are going to happen? And when two drugs are equally effective, okay, if I can tell you that, listen, if you've got epilepsy, but if I give you carbamazepine or I give you valproate, both of them are going to work beautifully for you. Don't worry, either of them will work. Then the next thing you look at is what are the known side effects of them and will they interfere with this child? So if it's a heavy child, I would not use valproate, I would use carbamazepine. If it's a thin child, I would say, okay, maybe I'll do valproate. He'll start eating and mom will feel happy also with it. If someone's got mood, I would use one. If someone already has an electrolyte imbalance, I would definitely not touch carbamazepine. So you have to look at the child as a whole and put it. So when two drugs are equally effective, tolerability is, or side effects will decide which drug to use. That is why I focus so much energy on teaching you the commonest one or two side effects of each drug so that you know what to look for. So now in importance, the first thing you will look for when you are starting medicine is what is the seizure type? Is it focal or is it generalized? Okay, or is it a type of syndrome where there is a known drug which works with it? Then I will say for this, is it partial? Which are the drugs of choice for partial seizures? Which are the drugs of choice for generalized seizures? So the effectiveness. Then I will see the tolerability of that or the side effects. What am I anticipating with this drug? Oh, this child already has half this, let me not use it. Oh, this child will benefit if I give it, the side effect will become a benefit to her, let me use that. The third is whether it's a small baby, you can't give a tablet and then crush it and defeats the purpose. So the syrup, the tablet or the IV makes a big difference, particularly in pediatric. And last but most important, I would say, or not least, I would say, is the cost. Fortunately, with this present government, many drugs have come under price control. So we are relatively safer that way than those where the newer drugs are still relatively more expensive. Just quick one slide to tell you when they studied phenytoin and phenobarbital versus carbamazepine and valproate, no difference between the two, as effective as each other. When they studied lamotrigine, topiramate, oxcarb, gabapentin, and vigabatrin versus carbamazepine and valproate, no difference. All the drugs were found to be as effective. The only one was vigabatrin was best for spasms, and it was less effective for partial seizures, but otherwise they were roughly similar in nature. So now when you treat a person, the aim of treatment has to be, one is seizure control, because that's what the parent has come to you, to take away the seizures. But you as a doctor have an added responsibility. You cannot change the life of that child by giving him side effects of that medicine. So you have to do seizure control with minimum or no drug side effects. So now this was a study which I'm sure you'll have all heard many a times, and that is when they tried a group of patients, new epileptic patients, they gave them all different drugs. Some got phenobarb, phenytoin, carbamazepine, valproate, any drug they got. Okay, and what did they notice? That 60 or 50% of them responded with the first drug. So irrespective of the drug they were given, 50% responded. Those who didn't were given a second AED, first one taken off, new one put. 13% more responded, so 63% responded. Third AED, 1% more. So you can see by the time you cross 2 AEDs, you're not going to get much more response. Then they did combination of 2, only 3% more gave you benefit. And when they did combination of 3, 0%. So what is the takeaway from here? The takeaway from here is that 60% of patients will respond to the first monotherapeutic drug that you put on them. But you have to try and choose the correct drug. And 30 to 40% will be difficult to control. And this 30% of patients who are difficult to control will be discussed with you tomorrow by Dr. Lokesh. So these are the ones who are going to be drug resistant or difficult epilepsies. So to point out again, when you choose your drug, the first is the seizure type, the second is the common side effects, and you have to relate it to your patient. So these are common things: start slow, go slow, reach a maximum dose. If you have a side effect, take off the drug, try and do OD and BD dosage, adjust it to the child's activity. Don't wake him up at 6 o'clock in the morning and Mona ma dava api daure. sit with a computer and calculate cha ganta, and you also become stressed as a parent, and the child also doesn't get to have a good life. Add a second drug when you achieve, if you achieve control, try and take off the first drug. Don't just keep adding medicines. 3 drugs gives you 0 benefit. So make the 1 or 2 the best options or the best combination. That's why we're doing this, to teach you the best combination. So management plan is, if 1 doesn't work, you'll try a second. If a second mono doesn't work, you might try a third, or you might go to a combination of 2. If combination of 2 don't work, you might try 2 or 3 different combinations, then 1 of 3. If they don't work, you'll think of ketogenic, surgery, or vagal nerve stimulator. When you join 2 drugs together, now you've understood fast acting, slow acting, sodium, potassium, SV2, GABA, etc. How do you do it? You see that you first look at the seizure type again. You must choose drugs only that work on your seizure type. You must see which is the epileptic syndrome you're dealing with. You must see the mechanism of the other drugs. So if I'm using 1 sodium, I would like to use 1 GABA now. Or if I'm using 1 calcium, I would use 1 broad spectrum one if it's very specific. Look at the side effects, interactions between the drug, and patient-related factors. So now the evidence that comes for which drug works best for which epilepsy is not just the top of our hat, or is not just what we experience. There are guidelines laid down by the International League Against Epilepsy. So this is the ILAE, which tells us which drugs work. Then we have the American Academy, which tells us which drugs work for which types of epilepsies. We have different consensus statements of almost all countries, including ours. Okay, so we did ours some years ago, and we made which drugs benefit with which. The Japanese have set up their own guidelines, and in cumulation, this is the unanimous decision that most people have for which drugs work best for which types of epilepsies. I have color-coded them so that you can see the ones which are in the pinks are those who are broad spectrum. Okay, when I say broad spectrum, means they work through different actions and they work on both partial and generalized epilepsies. So valproate is the drug of choice for generalized seizures. There's topiramate, lamotrigine, levetiracetam, phenobarb, and benzodiazepines. Absence epilepsy, valproate is still the drug of choice. Now ethosuximide is available, but it's very specific only for absence epilepsy. Lamotrigine can be used. Myoclonic seizures, valproate is the drug of choice, lamotrigine, topiramate, zonisamide, levetiracetam. Okay, so these are the drugs of choice, and you can see all of them are very broad drugs. They work on multiple types of seizures. Whereas if you go to partial seizures, the drugs of choice are oxcarb or carbamazepine, and they're in a different color because they're specific. Though they can be used in generalized, they're really specific for partial epilepsies. And the others are your broad spectrum, which were there for generalized and partial: lamotrigine, topiramate, levetiracetam, lacosamide, brivaracetam, valproate. Phenytoin comes into the partial specifically. And again, partial to generalized is like partial only. It's just that the spread has happened in the brain, which I think you must have understood yesterday after Rajesh spoke. And this is the good combinations. The combination that works the best is valproate plus lamotrigine. Okay, topiramate plus carbamazepine. You can see these are broad spectrum and these are more specific. Levetiracetam with any other drug is a good combination because they work in different methods. So these are roughly the broad ones. We've covered them, and these are the add-on drugs which you will not use as a first-line drug. You will add them onto another drug. So I have a monotherapy drug, and then I have an add-on drug which I will add on to try and get the benefit from it. And just to tell you that some anti-epileptic drugs actually can cause worsening of your symptoms, particularly your sodium channels, carbamazepine, benzodiazepines, lamotrigine can actually give you myoclonic or absence seizures. So they're not just drugs which are magical and make everything go away or become good. Sometimes they can actually make the picture worse. And another very important part before we go to the questions is, these are the drugs and the cost of them. So you must keep the cost in mind when you're looking at, this was calculated for a 10 kg baby, roughly what it would be like a 1-year-old baby. And these were the different preparations: syrup, tablets, and intravenous. While most have only tablets, you want to see, is it scored? Is it unscored? Is it a DT? Is it an OD? Today we've got so much option. When I started, there was no DT, no OD, nothing. It was just tablets and 1 or 2 syrups. And do remember that children with epilepsy have a huge percentage of comorbidity. So learning is a problem. I will not give a learning drug on a learning deficient patient. I will not give a hyperactive drug on a hyperactive patient. So if I put Furosemide on a child who's hyperactive, I am asking for trouble. Anyone who has sleep disorders, either he's too sleepy, I will not put a somnolent drug, or if he's not sleeping, I will put something that gives you somnolence. Nutrition, frequency of feeding and drug related, I'll choose my drug. And social interaction, don't see that any mood related stuff comes, otherwise a little sort of that stigma, that ostracized just becomes worse. So again, seizure type, I'm pointing it out multiple times. What are the different variables that are important when you choose, but it has to be based on your patient. So now let's start the questions. 9-year-old, normal development, left-sided mouth twitching and eye deviation. That means I'm most likely looking at a left focal seizure. They last 2 minutes each. She had 3 events in sleep over a 15-day period. Means 3 seizures, most likely she needs to be treated. They've decided to give her medication. Her EEG is showing frequent central temporal discharges. She's going to need to go for at least 2 years seizure-free. What would you consider the most important when planning your first AED? We put this to vote.
So yes, doctor, the poll is on now, and I've started getting the responses as well from the poll. Last 7 seconds to go before we end the poll. Okay, we end the poll here, and I'm sharing the results to Dr. Anaida. Yes, doctor, these are the results for us.
Okay, superb. So the first result, so this is, can I close this?
Yeah.
So the answer was correct, which 88% of y'all got, is the seizure type. The first thing you look at before you choose your drug is what is the seizure type? Is it focal or is it generalized? Then you move to how effective or not effective, and then how many side effects are there to it. Okay, so we go to the next one then. Now this is a picture of 5 little girls in their little village, and while most of them are really very thin, this one in particularly is very thin. I couldn't find which is the thinnest of the lot, but mom is obsessed because this one just khati ch nahi hai, kya karu doctor, bilkul khati nahi hai. Uska vajan hi badhte nahi rehta hai. So this is something you all hear very often. Question, which drug would you not choose for this young girl?
Yes, Dr. Anaida, the polling is on. I'm getting faster responses from most of the participants. Last 7 seconds to go before I end the poll and give it to Dr. Anaida. I end the poll now.
So I tricked
and yes, over to you, Dr. Anaida.
Yeah, I tricked you a little bit. I put a negative question. Which drug would you not choose? She is super thin. Correct? Now let's look at it. When we're looking at it, the drug you would not use is topiramate, which I'll be happy. 82% said topiramate, 10 said valproate, 6 said oxcarb, and only 2 said levetiracetam. All of them. This is a focal epilepsy. So valproate would have worked, topiramate would have worked, oxcarb would have worked, levetiracetam would have worked. So when you're choosing a drug, if all of them are equally effective, what did I tell you? You look at the side effects. Now she's super thin and mom is conscious that she's super thin. Forget that she doesn't look unhealthy. She looks very healthy, but mom is obsessed. And if I gave topiramate and she stopped eating, mom would just go into depression. So sometimes you treat the family as well when you treat the child. So the drug of choice that you would not use in this child would be topiramate. Now we're looking at another girl in the same group. Okay, you can see she's very heavy. Either she loves her food or she's got an endocrine disorder. And the next question is going to be, which drug would you not choose for this girl?
Yes, Dr. Anaida, the poll is on. I'm getting responses as well. 100 plus responses as of now. Last 7 seconds to go before I end the poll. I end the poll now and sharing the results to Dr. Anaida.
Superb. So 93% said they would not use valproate, 5 said they would not use oxcarb, and 2 said levetiracetam. The answer is valproate. She's already heavy. Valproate produces PCOD, which is one. What does it do? It produces a hyperinsulinic state. Very difficult when you take off the valproate to come back to what it was. So you do not definitely want it in a child who's already overeating, whose sugars and insulin levels may already be high. So valproate is a no-no in that young girl. Another girl, this is a 14-year-old girl, normal development. She presented with generalized tonic-clonic events in the early morning after wakening from sleep. Second event. So now look at the age. She's 14. She's an adolescent. She's absolutely normal. She had a seizure which happened on awakening. This was her second event, means we're going to start treatment. She also gets history of early morning jerks, and mom had labeled her as clumsy. I think many of you may have guessed what she has. She has no noticeable behavior, academic or social concerns, but her EEG is showing generalized discharges suggestive of idiopathic or a juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, the commonest epilepsy you would see at this age. Okay, now, what is the drug of choice for generalized seizures? I'm asking you a broad question, not related to the girl. I'm asking you, drug of choice for generalized seizures.
Yes, Dr. Anaita, the polling is on. 100 plus responses as of now, very fast, high responder rates. Last 7 seconds to go, all the participants, before I end the poll and give it to Dr. Anaita. Okay, I end the poll now and sharing the results with Dr. Anaita. Over to you, doctor.
Yeah, 80% said valproate, 16% said levetiracetam, 4% said lamotrigine. Honestly speaking, all three of you could have been right. Okay, because they are all broad spectrums and they are all used for generalized seizures. Valproate would be the drug of choice, but you could comfortably use levetiracetam or lamotrigine. They work on both of them. The one you would definitely not have used is oxcarbazepine, because this is a frank generalized epilepsy, and this is a drug which works on partial epilepsies and can actually make JME worse. It can actually produce abscences and myoclonia in patients with JME. Now, just to highlight, juvenile myoclonic epilepsy is the commonest epilepsy from adolescents, and 80% of children or people in JME will need medicine lifelong. They respond beautifully to tiny doses, but they find it very difficult to come off the medicine. The day they stop the medicine, even if they miss it one day, they run the risk of throwing a seizure. So now the case is the same case, but I added one line at the bottom. After the first seizure, the parents got so scared that they indulged her totally. They made her what she wanted. They stopped her from going out. She was not allowed picnics. She was not allowed outings. This whole stigma, the whole thing of epilepsy. And what happened is the kid is now 75 kgs at 14 years, and she is in depression. So I have a generalized epilepsy in an adolescent young girl, otherwise was absolutely normal, bang on target, but she's gone into depression and she's exceedingly overweight. Next question. What is the drug of choice for this girl?
Yes, doctors, all the participants, the poll is on. A bit slow, but now it is picking up. 100 plus responses, and last 7 seconds to go before I give it to Dr. Anaita. Okay, I end the poll now and sharing results with Dr. Anaita.
So lovely. You said 48% said topiramate, 1% said valproate, which is not correct because she's already too heavy. 26 said levetiracetam and 26 said lamotrigine. Okay, now if you had asked me, my drug of choice would have been lamotrigine. Why would I choose lamotrigine? Let's think. This is a lifelong epilepsy. There's a very good chance she's going to be on this drug when she becomes married and pregnant and have children down the line. There's a very good chance I may not be able to take her off the anti-epileptic. Okay? Plus, she's gone into depression. So with that depression, if I can give her a drug that works well for JMEs, and I can hit the depression, and God forbid in anything happens and she becomes pregnant or she gets married very young or whatever, she's on a safe drug and I don't need to take it off and add something else, it becomes much easier. But you are justified in saying levetiracetam, and you are very justified in saying topiramate because it will do wonders for her behavior if she loses weight and she feels happy and confident with herself. But when we're choosing, that's what we're looking. We're looking at today, we're looking at tomorrow, we're looking how many years will she need it, Which one, if she gets pregnant, what will it do on her weight? What will it do? And to me, my psyche is more important than my weight to make her feel good. So I would have chosen lamotrigine. I'm quickly going to run through specific common epilepsies. We're not going to go into detail, but this is what are we going to cover? Neonatal seizures, drugs of choice, febrile seizures, spasms, Lennox-Gastaut, benign partial epilepsies, absence epilepsies, juvenile myoclonic epilepsies. Neonatal epilepsies, phenobarb, good and safe, phenytoin, poor bioavailability, valproate safe, but you need to monitor any child less than a year or 2 years who's on valproate. But I'm talking about neonate and infantile period. Topiramate is very neuroprotective. It's the new phenobarb in the newborn period if you want to protect the brain. Levetiracetam, very safe and very effective, and also has syrup, so it becomes very easy. And vigabatrin, but not more than 9 to 12 months. What is the take home? A lovely study came out of Harvard, which was released literally a few months ago. And what it says that when they compared phenobarbital versus levetiracetam, phenobarbital controlled 80% of seizures, levetiracetam controlled less than 30% of the seizures. So while we all prefer levetiracetam, non-sedating, won't go on ventilator, won't make him drowsy, efficacy, this is where you say efficacy. So first you choose the seizure type, neonatal seizure. Efficacy of the drug, which is best? Phenobarb distinctly over levetiracetam. Okay, then you look at the tolerability. Yes, levetiracetam is more tolerable than phenobarb. So if I'm worried about putting her on a ventilator or she's going to a small village and you're worried whatever might happen, then maybe you choose levetiracetam. But otherwise, drug of choice, neonatal period is still phenobarbital, followed by levetiracetam, followed by topiramate. Do remember that there are certain metabolic treatable epilepsies, and we need to try everyone who's intractable on pyridoxine, biotin, and if the CSF shows low sugars, the ketogenic diet. Febrile seizures. No role for long term. You've had a talk on it, intermittent prophylaxis. Some countries don't even say that, but the Indian consensus says we use intermittent prophylaxis, and long-term treatment may be entertained. And here I say may be entertained in very, very anxious parents and grandparents, repeated status episodes, or very frequent events which are more than 6 times in a year. And the drugs of choice would be valproate or phenobarb if it's in the first year, but consensus, no AEDs as far as possible, intermittent clobazam may be given. Infantile spasms, ACTH is the drug of choice. Vigabatrin is a very good drug for tuberous sclerosis. So what are the ones? The doses of ACTH, you'll find everyone uses different doses, but we are coming out with our Indian recommendations. So very soon you'll know the doses. Vigabatrin, I've explained visual field. Oral steroids can be used. Ketogenic, nitrazepam, topiramate. What does the Indian consensus say? ACTH is still the drug of choice first. Oral steroids can be as effective. Vigabatrin is fantastic, but particularly for tuberous sclerosis, very expensive, not available other than the black market. Topiramate, very good drug, but it's slow acting. It takes weeks to reach the actual full benefit of topiramate if you titrate it very slowly every 1 to 2 weeks. Plus it has such a long half-life, so you'll be 2 months before you get topiramate in its full dose. And this is an aggressive epilepsy. You want to hit it hard and fast so that regression doesn't happen. Nitra, with superb drug for spasms, but causes lots of secretion. So be careful of chest infections. Lennox-Gastaut ideally is a bit much for y'all as pediatrician. If you get a Lennox-Gastaut, you should have sent it by now to your pediatric neurologist. It's the most difficult epilepsy to treat. Multiple drugs. It's one of the few conditions where you would use combination medication. Valproate, lamotrigine, clobazam, ketogenic can be done, topiramate can be done, and I think CBD, I had written here by mistake, it's gone to the next slide. That is cannabis. Benign epilepsy of childhood, which is benign Rolandic epilepsy, occipital epilepsy, the drug of choice would be AEDs, which work on partial seizures, that's oxcarb and carb, but you can use a broad spectrum anti-epileptic as well. So you could use levetiracetam, valproate, lacosamide, any of the broad spectrum ones in this. The CBD, sorry, is for the previous slide. Absence epilepsy, you all know it at the back of your hand. Valproate is the drug of choice. Today we have ethosuximide in the market. We are lucky, but I'll be honest, I still find valproate distinctly much better. And this is the condition we just discussed in a little detail. That's JME, or juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. It's the commonest adolescent going into adult age epilepsy. And what would your consensus on this be? If you are a male, without a doubt, the drug of choice is sodium valproate. I have patients on 125 milligrams. That's it. 20-year-old people, 30-year-old people, just 125 or 250 milligram, tiny dose. But he has to remember to take it every day, otherwise he might get a seizure the next day. But in females, what you would do, lamotrigine is, I would say, maybe your drug of choice, given that if you have to go long-term, it's a safe drug. Topiramate is also used. Levetiracetam is now being used more. And sometimes if one of these don't work alone, what you could do is you could add a very tiny dose of valproate. The PCOD is what you're worried about. Young adolescent girl, you don't want her putting on weight, becoming hirsute, menstrual irregularity, and pregnancy problems in the future. But if you to keep your valproate below 600 milligrams, you do not get the side effects of the PCOD. So you might put one drug and then put a 250 or a 500 valproate and see if you can manage with them. So what are the expert opinions? For GTCs and symptomatic myoclonic, it is VPA. For complex partials, it's carbamazepine, oxcarb, and maybe VPA. For spasms, it's vigabatrin, ACTH, and steroids. For Lennox-Gastaut, it's valproate, lamotrigine, and clobazam. It's really your pediatric neurologist. There should be no drugs. They should be sent to pediatric neurologists. Benign epilepsy, valproate, levetiracetam. JME, if you're male, without a doubt, it's valproate. If you're female, you might think of lamotrigine, levetiracetam, topiramate. Absent seizures, valproate, ethosuximide, and lamotrigine. And seizures, rectal diazepam, nasal diazepam, neonatal phenobarb, and levetiracetam and status are the two preparations. And these are rare epilepsies, which I don't think you all need to know at all. But when you have a syndrome, this is where you have a particular syndrome. Sometimes in syndromes, it doesn't go via the seizure type. So Landau-Kleffner is a child who loses her speech because of interictal EEG discharges. The drug of choice is steroids. Then it's AEDs. Some even try IVIG. Some even try surgical options in them. When you have severe myoclonic epilepsy, the drug of choice would be stiripentone, not available here. Then would be CBD. Then would be ketogenic diet. Then the other AEDs. So you see, they don't always fit the book when you're a specific epileptic syndrome. And just one slide on clobazam, which you'll all know is like the magic. It's, I think, for pediatricians who get woken in the middle of the night. My child is having a seizure. It's the easiest and the fastest way to try and cut it, other than the nasal spray. Excellent for intermittent prophylaxis, is like you do for febrile seizures. If a child gets a prolonged aura and he feels uneasy and he knows it's going to come, when it lasts for more than a few minutes, you can crush the tablet and try and use it. Cluster seizures are what? When a child has multiple seizures, tuck, 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 1, 2, 3, 5 in a day. And for 2 days, we'll have 5 or 10 seizures. And then for 3 months, we'll have nothing. But then again, when it comes that whole day, dhar, 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 he'll have seizures and mom gets really worried. Why? Because he can go into status. And you don't want him going into status. So it prevents a status. So in cluster seizures, if you know today is a cluster day, don't wait for number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Give him a clobazam immediately. Okay, you can do 2 clobazam, 3 clobazam, 4 on a day, not in this, just to break the cycle so that you don't go into status epilepticus. And this again is to highlight that there are worsenings. Remember these very much. Absence and myoclonics come with some of these drugs. Do not forget this. So your next question is: a 7-month-old baby with tuberous sclerosis has infantile spasms and neuroregression with an EEG showing hypsarrhythmia. Which drug would you choose?
Yes, doctor, the poll is on. Requesting all the participants to respond, please. Crosses the 100 mark. And as always, last 7 seconds to go before I give it to Dr. Anaita. 3, 2, 1. I end the poll now and share the results with Dr. Anaita. Over to you, doctor.
Thank you. So you can see 62% of you chose vigabatrin. 33 said ACTH, 5 said oral steroids, and high dose valproate. Tuberous sclerosis is the one cause of infantile spasms where you must use vigabatrin. In fact, today we are doing studies to see if we can prevent the spasms from coming by starting vigabatrin early. So vigabatrin is not only protects from seizures, it is actually anti-epileptogenic, means it can prevent epilepsy from coming. So if you have a child with tuberous sclerosis, please, your choice should be 101% vigabatrin first. All other infantile spasms, secondary to HIE, secondary to birth asphyxia, secondary to hypoglycemic brain damage, etc., etc., ACTH would be your drug of choice. So those who said ACTH are not wrong. But if you knew that it's tuberous sclerosis and you took off the clothes and you saw those white ash leaves and you did an MRI and you saw those tubers, your drug has to change to vigabatrin. Okay, so that was vigabatrin. And the next question is day 5 seizures, normal metabolism, multiple seizures, treated with the high dose vitamins and no benefit. Ideally, which drug would you use?
Yes, dear participants, the poll is on. Quite slow to start with, crossing the mark of 100. Last 7 seconds to go, dear doctors, before I end the poll. 4, 3, 2, 1, and I end the poll and share the results with Dr. Anaita.
76,
Over to you, doctor.
Thank you. 76% says phenobarb, 14% say levetiracetam, 4 say phenytoin, and 7 say topiramate. Okay, the answer obviously is I tried to highlight. I know many of you are still very comfortable with levetiracetam because it's syrup, it's easy, it's non-sedating. But I think the recent literature study which shows that phenobarb is distinctly more effective than levetiracetam should make you want to stick to phenobarb as your first line AED for neonatal seizures or infantile seizures, followed by levetiracetam, followed maybe by topiramate. Remember, topiramate has no syrup. It's only a tablet, crushing a 25 milligram tablet, weight, loss of weight, appetite. You give a 1-month baby something which makes him not eat. That mom is going to stress, and rightfully so. And phenytoin, as far as possible, very, very poor bioavailability. So my choices would have been phenobarb 1 and levetiracetam 2, which is really what you all have done. But I would distinctly have wanted more on the phenobarb. So in conclusion, choosing the right first drug is of paramount importance. Now you've understood 60 to 70% of epilepsies will get treated with the first or the second anti-epileptic drug. Choose it correctly because you will help that child from going from multiple drugs down the line. Most important thing is the seizure type. Then once you've identified the seizure type, how effective is this drug that you're thinking? Then what are the side effects of that drug? Do I get it in syrup, tablet, or injectable available? And how expensive or cheap is that drug? And then you decide the drug of choice, but this has to be in relation to the patient sitting across the table with you. When you do combination therapy, make a rational therapy now. Don't just say, okay, ek ye, abhi ye dusra wala laga do. You'll say, oh, this is a carbamazepine, it's sodium. Let me see if I can put something which is GABA. Let me put levetiracetam, which is SV2A. Let me try something. So choose your drug with different modalities, less drug-drug interaction, etc. Alternative options which are there, keep them in mind for specific syndromes. If the child has failed 2 drugs, or if he's got a cortical dysplasia or something on the brain that you think surgery might work, don't sit with him. Just send him off to referral immediately. You'll have an amazing center which has come up as a one-stop shop for your patients. Please use this advantage because you will save your patients from so many side effects, complications, drug-related problems, and it will benefit the patient. Everything that's new is not always better. So this is really for all of you who still voted levetiracetam, for all of you who still voted the old drug that you prefer. Remember, you prescribe as per your comfort level. You have to be comfortable with the drug. I struggle when a new drug comes in. I am a very slow initiator to try a new drug, but then once I'm comfortable with it and I see how good it is, I can go faster. So do the same. I'm not telling you tomorrow put all the Topamax, lamotrigines and everything, but try the new ones. Lacosamide is a very good new one to keep in mind. The conventional AEDs are as good as the new, but the newer AEDs have less side effects. You have to look at it that way. And drug monitoring, I did not cover that because it's a topic on its own, is not routinely recommended. So don't make everyone go for drug levels every time they visit you, please. So with that, I thank you. Do we have questions now? How do I go about? Shall I stop sharing screen?
Yes, that would be great. Yeah, that's fantastic to be on screen. I can see the of the lecture ending, but you have lots of questions coming up. And I must say thanks from everyone. A fantastic lecture, very thorough. I think it made life for everyone so easy. There are questions as well. So let's start with common drug, that's sodium valproate. And what it says is what's earliest age you would be happy to use that. It is 2 questions. So as part of that is how earliest you can use it. And once we know that's no etiology found, can we still safely use in younger age group?
So I think again, it's how comfortable you are with the drug. So if I had to recommend to you, I would say to pediatricians, preferably after 2 years of age, because less than 2 years of age, you need to monitor. That's the only indication where you need to monitor the LFT. Simply why? Because you don't know whether this child's seizures are just epilepsy or whether he might be sitting on an underlying metabolic disorder. If he happens to be one of those rare metabolic epilepsies, mitochondrial epilepsies, which are called G, it's particularly one gene which gives you this encephalopathic picture, then that valproate will give you a problem. But other than that, for someone like me where I know and we feel comfortable that this doesn't look metabolic, I could use it even in the first year of life. But on an average, if you're using it before 2 years of age, you need to monitor the valproate.
And that's the next question, which how would you monitor and how frequently you will monitor with the sodium valproate?
So I'm highlighting, I will only monitor if it were less than 2 years. I do not monitor otherwise, because really the monitoring causes more problems than it does good. You remember drug levels when you do, you have to understand one thing, that 50 to 100 is not cast in stone, that if you're above 100, you must stop it. Remember, it's 50th centile people who lie between 50 and 100. There will be 25% of people will benefit even in doses higher than 100, and 25% maybe less than 50, and still they are under control. So do not look at a drug level and think, "Arey baap re, abhi bahut zyada ho gaya, dawa band kar do." You get it? So you may do a drug level. If you have a problem, you may do an OT-PT. The one that you're really worried about is the PT, which may be elevated in those who have metabolic disorders. And when you're doing valproate, the problem with most valproate-related problems is the ammonia. It's not the liver enzymes. Valproate and topiramate, valproate and lamotrigine, all of them cause hyperammonemia. So you become drowsy, lethargic, lose interest in things, and vomiting, nausea and vomiting. So the ammonia has to be done, arterial sample has to be properly interpreted, done properly, and then you can either add carnitine and see if you can elevate the problems, or you cut the dose of one of your 2 drugs.
Sure. Then something about same sodium valproate, but what's the difference between sodium valproate and divalproate sodium, and which is preferred in which condition?
Yeah, so divalproate sodium has a major advantage, as it causes less GI disturbance than sodium valproate. And it has an extended release where you can take an OD preparation. So I use lots of divalproate sodium, but I use it in the older children who go to school, who are going to college, who are going to go into a job down the line. You don't want them to forget their medicine, who are self-medicating themselves, the JMEs. And you don't want them to forget, and you don't want mommy to come and say 3 times, dawa lai le. The child needs to do it himself. So if it's a once a day dose, it becomes much easier to remember than if it's twice a day. Less side effects and sustained release, major advantage.
No, that's very useful. And from here, the next question related is, if it's a OD dosing, would you prefer giving the morning or evening, or it doesn't matter?
If I'm doing an OD dosage, It really doesn't matter when you're giving an OD dose. I prefer to give it in evening at night, simply because some of them, most anti-epileptics will have a small degree of sedation in them. That's a common, if you saw my side effect rule, the first line is little bit of drowsy sedation might be there. So if that's to happen, you don't want it happening in the morning when you go to school or college. Let it happen at night, fall asleep, next day you're absolutely fine.
Perfect. Something on side effects of sodium valproate as well as say carbamazepine. If you're getting a rash, so there are few questions on rash as a side effect. First and foremost, is it necessary to stop AD? Answer is of course yes. But how early or how late the rash can happen in the treatment?
So most of these rashes, be it the common ones to give you a rash are carbamazepine, oxcarbazepine, lamotrigine. These are the three most common drugs to give you a rash, but that doesn't mean it cannot happen with valproate, levetiracetam, topiramate, etc. The rash can usually, if it's idiosyncratic, can happen anytime. You can be 3 years, as I said, on the drug and out of the blue you have a rash, but usually those who get the rash is during the titration phase. So you put a high dose or you titrate too rapidly, or you're in a combination with two toxic doses. So if you have a carbamazepine and a lamotrigine, or a lamotrigine with a valproate, the chances of rash are a little higher. But there's no telling who's going to get it. If you get the rash, I always say run to your pediatrician first. I don't tell them stop immediately, simply because very often viral rash can be mistaken. So I recently had one, and mom turns around and says, "Kaan ne pachal baddu lal lal thai gyu." And then I said, okay, thank God I didn't stop it. Because when you get seizure control with a drug and then you have to take it off because it was not really a drug rash or a viral rash, instead it's this. So I say run to your pediatrician. If he tells you it's drug rash or this, then please stop it immediately.
That's very helpful. And so how you manage rash, that is covered. And how you manage seizures when you are going to stop the drugs because of rash. So if I have oxcarbazepine, I'm stopping because of rash, how do I manage that period?
So if I'm already on another anti-epileptic, I might up the dose of the other anti-epileptic while I take off this. You need to take it off soon. You cannot take it off slowly. You cannot say, I will taper over 4 to 6 months. Nonsense. You take it off over 2 days, max, or 3 days. You have to get it out of the system immediately. So when you stop an anti-epileptic immediately, you run the risk of a rebound seizure. So you either add a rescue medication like a clobazam, or you add another one that you would like to continue, which does not interfere with whatever the systems are involved in the child at that moment. And then you continue on that. Or you just up the dose of the existing one and see whether you can manage with just one or whatever. But you have to take it off soon.
Sure. So suppose a child is on single AD, got the rash, so you stop immediately. Which drug would you start for immediate effect?
Sorry, say that again. If he's on a single AED and he's got a rash, which drug would I put? Again, I would start as if I'm choosing a drug again. I would see what type of seizure it is. I would see what type of efficacy I'm looking at. Then I'd see the tolerability of it. Then I'd see the preparation, the cost, and then I would choose exactly the same way as I chose the first one.
So there was a prompt here, which would you be using levetiracetam and clobazam because they are very quick acting, or titration?
That's a very good concept, because levetiracetam works very fast, and if you want to prevent him from rebounding into something immediately, you would maybe take a levetiracetam into the picture and cause it. And you may think twice about a valproate, because when you've got a rash like this, sometimes you have a DRESS syndrome, and a DRESS syndrome will give you lymph nodes, hepatic, kidney, skin, multiple system involvement. So you don't want to add a drug which would be acting on another organ which might get affected. So a levetiracetam would be a good, I would have done a levetiracetam, maybe a lacosamide, something like that, which would work.
Now moving towards, means away from sodium valproate, but if you have good combination of sodium valproate, oxcarbazepine, which is working well, for how long you continue that? And is it a safe combination, or you would like to change the combination?
If something is working, rule number 1, do not touch it. Never play with anti-epileptics to suit your conscience or your inside. If it's working for the child and it's not giving side effects, please do not touch it. So I know oxcarbazepine is a total no-no for a generalized epilepsy, but sometimes you'll get this patient who walks into your clinic who's a JME and who's on Oxcarb and hasn't had a seizure after starting, I wouldn't touch it. What works for that child works. Don't play around with it.
That's very helpful, and I think it's very practical solutions. Something on topiramate, you can use OD or BD preparation. Would you prefer OD than BD, or is there any condition where you prefer BD better than OD? And second is, when your side effects of topiramate, like sedation, what you can do to reduce that side effect?
So topiramate, on an average, when children are young and parents are giving the medicines, I prefer giving BD dosage. Okay, I get better measurements in the blood. I know the mom will be sincere and she'll do it. When I'm moving to an older child, and or a mom is very busy, or there are socioeconomic issues or whatever, sometimes in the family, then I move to an OD dose so that the dose is not missed out. Topiramate side effects, which is the hypothermia, you just up the dose of fluids. If it still doesn't happen, you take down the topiramate. If you have renal calculi, you will put something to cause urinary dilution. So we put pot chlor usually. If I'm putting a patient on Topamac and something which may give me, I add pot chlor to the thing. What is it? The appetite, you titrate the dose of Topamac very slowly over weeks to beat that loss of appetite side effect. And if you get nominal aphasia, no choice, you have to cut the drug a little bit.
That's very helpful. Moving to levetiracetam and brevestam, they both act on same receptor, but then since why it is such that Brevec is more potent and less side effects?
Brevactracetam is more potent because it's more selective in its binding of the SV2 receptor. It binds more, it has a much better binding capacity with the SV2 receptor, so that similar smaller dose will give you a much better effect than if you had a levetiracetam. The benefit of brevactracetam is lesser side effects, but I want to highlight, doesn't mean they don't happen, but they happen less. And it's an OD preparation. It's much easier for older child, but it's expensive. Whereas levetiracetam has come under price control, brevactracetam is expensive.
Something on levetiracetam, we know it is IV and can be useful in status epilepticus. At what stage in status you use levetiracetam?
At what stage in status? After you've used your midazolam, your 1 or 2 midazolams, patient has come in, you presumed he's in status. Honestly, if he's coming to the casualty, you could easily start with an IV levetiracetam straight. For the simple reason, it's fast acting, that's 1. 2, it's non-sedating. And there are ample studies that show that the incidence of admission into the ICU become less if you have caught the status early and the levetiracetam works. If not, phenobarb, then phenobarb followed by levetiracetam. Or some would say phenobarb phenytoin followed by levetiracetam. Now, each ICU protocol is different. Okay? And when you're in an ICU in a hospital, it's very different from an ICU in a small nursing home. You get it? I have to follow the protocol in my hospital if I'm in a hospital, and that would be phenobarb, phenytoin, levetiracetam. Or now it would be phenobarb, levetiracetam, valproate, maybe phenytoin, etc., down the line. But I know in nursing homes, people use IV levetiracetam first.
So it should be benzo followed by levetiracetam, or levetiracetam, if it doesn't work, then benzodiazepine.
Benzo is first for sure.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, benzo is first. Even if mother has given a benzo, you will give 1 more benzo. Unless mother has given 2 benzos, then you would be worried about the 3rd benzo. But if he's come to you, you should give 1 benzo for sure, because you're in the ICU, you've got infrastructure, oxygen, and everything is there. You can protect him. So benzo first for sure, short acting, midazolam, nasal, IV, whatever you want, followed by either phenobarb or levetiracetam. But if it's levetiracetam, good chances of not going to the ICU.
Sure, no, that's very helpful. Now coming to the spasms, epileptic spasms. It's very clear, you made very clear that if it's TS, it's vigabatrin, otherwise first choice is steroids, that's ACTH. The question is, what's the mechanism of action of ACTH in spasms?
What's the mechanism of action? So today we don't really know the actual mechanism of action, but we have enough science now to prove to us that the inflammatory response that is created due to trauma, damage, etc., in perinatal insult, etc., is actually simmering and ongoing within the cells and and it causes like your tumor necrotic factors. There's a whole inflammatory response that happens, and that triggers epilepsy over a period of time. So one of the roles of ACTH or oral steroids or methylpred or any of the other steroids is to suppress this inflammatory response, which is at a cellular level, not monitorable, but at a cellular level. And with that, if you cut that inflammation, you may be able to break the circuit of epilepsy.
If you are using steroid ACTH, we understand tablet prednisolone. Can we use IV methylprednisolone?
So that's not on the protocols, but yes, we use it in Landau-Kleffner. Yes, we use it in certain severe intractable epilepsies where we are not getting a hang on it. We want a high dose steroid to kick in, and then we just keep him and do it once a month. So I'll be honest, there's a bigger role for methylprednisolone today for epilepsy than before. But again, that has to be under a super specialized pediatric neurologist. I mean, whether you're looking at autoimmune, epilepsy or what, and then you decide.
But not in West syndrome at the moment.
No.
West syndrome, we know second line drugs, as you suggested, are topiramate, nitrazepam, zonisamide, etc. Does it differ if its child has lesion positive or MRI positive or MRI negative? Would the drug changes?
No, ideally the drugs wouldn't change. If my MRI were negative, my outcomes might be better. My seizure control might be faster. My cognitive regression might be less, and I might have a better outcome. But I would still start with ACTH if situation is allows. So we all work in different situations. So if someone comes who's going back to the village and an injection with a nurse is not possible on a daily basis, ACTH is a no-no. Then you do oral steroid. But if my choices were this, it would be ACTH, vigabatrin, topiramate, nitrazepam, and whatever.
Sure. Now, staying in spasm, if you know it's a TS, would you prefer just vigabatrin or versus vigabatrin plus steroids? What's your choice?
I would do just vigabatrin. And very often with even a tiny dose of vigabatrin, I have a patient with just quarter vigabatrin, everything stopped. I have maybe just, in all the TSs you see, maybe less than 5% who will not respond to vigabatrin and will need a second drug. But the vigabatrin in the TS works for the spasms. Remember, TS also has focal seizures, generalized seizures, a whole spectrum of seizures which come as age goes by. The vigabatrin doesn't work so well on those. So you will very often have a patient with TS on oxcarbazepine and vigabatrin. The oxcarb is controlling the focal seizures. The vigabatrin is controlling the spasms which are there. And that way you'll have a combination of AEDs.
Great, man. Now going to Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. We understand sodium valproate, stiripentol if possible, sodium valproate, clobazam, etc. Lamotrigine, very good drug, but we have seen, it's someone's question, that it increases myoclonus of LGS. What to do if myoclonus is increasing with lamotrigine?
So, this myoclonus increasing with lamotrigine, I don't know. In all my years, very, very, very rarely have I seen that. And if anybody, maybe just a JME or a PME who really becomes worse with lamotrigine. Lamotrigine is the drug of choice for tonic spasms. So in Lennox-Gastaut, you have the spectrum of seizures. You have the tonic spasms where he wakes up in the morning and he has this big spasm with eyes rolled up and he screams in the first few minutes after waking up, which usually happens in bed. And sometimes he'll have a cluster of them, one after the other, after the other. They last for about 5 to 10 minutes and they may go. And then they don't usually come the rest of the day, but they're debilitating because he can fall, he can hurt himself, all that. So lamotrigine is the drug of choice when your tonic spasm ratio is up. Clobazam is your drug of choice for the head drops. For the small ones which come, clobazam works wonders on the head drops. Valproate works on everything. It works on myoclonia, it works on tonic, and it works on your drops. So and it works on the atypical absences as well. So it works on all the spectrum of the LGS. So I find valproate lamotrigine a very underused combination, which is magical if you get it correct. If you don't get the rash, it's a super combination.
Sure. Something on Dravet syndrome. We understand again sodium valproate, clobazam, very good combination with lamotrigine. What's the role of fenfluramine?
So fenfluramine is the new drug on the block. It was used for weight loss. It was promoted as a diet medication many years ago in America. And that's how it got used in epilepsy, because they understood the sodium channel and how it worked. And that's what we call precision medicine, that you use the sodium channel, you went back and saw which other drug works on the sodium channel, you found fenfluramine, and this study is ongoing. It's available in the West, but not routinely. I think it'll be a very good option when it comes out. I think we're looking at something hopefully good.
Sure. Something on reflex or stimulus sensitive seizures. What would be your drug of choice?
There's no drug that really works on reflex stimulus seizures. The best drug of choice would be clonazepam, just as an anti-anxiety and cuts the sensory input. You see, you work on things in different ways. One is the anti-epileptic effect, the other is the anti-sensory. So I'm a child who's visually sensitive, and I keep looking into the light and doing that and having seizures one after. But if my sensory input becomes little suppressed, then I may not have so many seizures. So you're working on it on a different mechanism, but maybe that's the best.
Sure. I think there's one basic question which is, I think, well, helpful to everyone, is if my first line aid is not working, how do I use second line drug or second base drug? So should I add to the first drug, take the first step off and then add second, or when I use both two drugs together?
So that was really the management chart, which I sort of rushed through because it was pretty long. You start one drug, which you have hopefully chosen correctly, but it doesn't work. If it doesn't work at all, you will add another drug and you will take off this drug slowly. So you'll first have both of them. You'll wait for this one to build up to its drug level. If it's a slow drug, it'll take time. If it's a fast drug, it'll happen fast. And then slowly you withdraw and you take away the first drug. So you're again still on monotherapy, second time. If your first drug has cut your seizure frequency by 50% or more, and you're only looking to cut 20 to 30%, which is less, you might consider an add-on drug to try and keep it in combination and do. So you'd have one solid monotherapy who's taken 70% away, and you put a clobazam or an add-on medication, which will try and get away that remaining 20 to 30%. If you've had less than 50% benefit with the first drug, I would say add another strong monotherapy, broad spectrum drug, working in a different mechanism from your first one, obviously, because it's not worked that well. And then slowly take away the first drug and try to keep your drugs at a minimum.
That's very useful. Very quick question, still lots of questions, but something on neural seizures. We all agree phenobarbital is the drug of choice. We know side effects. Few things, levetiracetam, what's the maximum dose we should use in neural seizures? Second is, if it's a status or bad seizures in neonates, can we use IV midazolam instead of phenobarbital?
So midazolam you would use if the patient is in neonatal status epilepticus. Midazolam is part of your protocol. So that happens, that goes without saying. Your levetiracetam, 50, 60, 70, you can easily go in the case of status epilepticus. I would say routinely 50, 60 can be done, and there are the odd ones which might go. I've actually seen a kid on 90 and 100 already, but 60, 70, you can go comfortably.
Mom, still lots of questions coming up, but I think
we'll answer them all.
Yes. So other thing is someone is on focal seizures, having good response with carbamazepine, now getting low sodium. Blood test does low sodium. What second line drug we should use?
So this low sodium, if it's persistent and getting symptoms, yes, you would take off the carbamazepine. You would use a broad spectrum anti-epileptic. Carbamazepine is specific for focal seizures. It's the drug of choice for Rolandic, for BEOPs, for the benign epilepsies, for any partial seizures and whatever, NCC related, anything related, you could use it. But if you're getting a side effect of it, you find another variable and you'll go exactly the same way. Look at seizure type, look at efficacy, look at side effects, and then the preparation and choose another one.
Someone on absence seizures. So sodium valproate was working well, but there's a weight gain. So we move to ethosuximide, but it is not helping. And parents don't want weight gain. So what is choice with us?
So this weight gain now is a big problem. So when I put it on, I always tell my parents that weight gain is expected. I tell them from the beginning to contain foods which are heavy on fats and sugars, etc. And I also tell them to put the child onto an exercise regime from start, because these are two good health habits, even otherwise, even if you were not on sodium valproate. If my ethosuximide was not working and I got super control with sodium valproate,
Yes.
I would actually keep my ethosuximide and add a very tiny dose of divalproate sodium on it, so that I do like a 125 or a 250 and see whether I can get away with it.
Sure. Other thing is on vigabatrin. So when we are using vigabatrin, how will we monitor vision?
So there's really no foolproof. Ideally, you need to do visual field. Okay, so perimetry, which you can't do in a 1-year-old child or a 2-year-old child if they don't, especially, or a child who's delayed development. So we do ERGs, and from the ERG, the ophthalmologist or the physiologist will be able to tell you if it's affected, and in which case that you might want to start taking down your vigabatrin. But very rarely, plus you have to be very understand with this vigabatrin, you know, the drug is so good, it's very specific. It's giving you seizure control. If the child is absolutely normal, yes, I can understand taking it off in a hurry for the field effect. But if the child already has cortical visual impairment, if the child is already cortically blind or has affected verge, and then the seizures are totally under control, and I have to weigh which one is worse. Is the vision more important, or is my seizure control? And, you know, there's neuroplasticity happening in the first year of life that will never happen ever again. So I can't kill those fibers at the cost of a fiber which is already damaged. So somewhere as a physician, you have to take that call as to which one outweighs the other and then decide on your vigabatrin.
I think time is ticking up, but I would say very interesting session, and I'm sure we can continue for next half hour, but better we respect time as well. So ma'am, I would say thank you very much from bottom of the heart, from RACA team, and thanks to all participants for that excellent interaction. And also to our sponsors who have made this nice arrangement. And also we would request our participants to be there tomorrow, because we have done fantastic job. First seizure, how you diagnose, how you approach, you start AEDs. But if it's not working, what to do with the refractory epilepsy with Dr. Lokesh Lingappa tomorrow 6 p.m. And madam, any specific message from your side, please?
No, my message is treatment is not just stopping the seizures. I very often see patients with multiple AEDs on them at the cost of their cognition, their behavior, their weight, their confidence. And rule number one, minimum drugs. If you had to take one of those drugs, you would know what it does to you inside. So minimum medication, so you have to be careful when you choose them, and always ask about associated comorbidities, whether it's behavior, schooling, socializing, etc. That's it.
That's it. Thank you very much. And I think lots of thanks and fantastic lecture. Thanks. So many messages.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we can stop the meeting here.